smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste the Therapist. Let's go.
Hi, beautiful people. So if you have never been into my podcast before, this is a live streaming podcast. I stream on Mondays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what I do is I talk to people who are doing things. Hi, Fathead. How are you? I haven't seen you. They about to close down Periscope. How are you? I stream live on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. I do got a whole theme song. Where you been? So my podcast is currently streaming in over 100 countries, and I'm streaming everywhere. I started out on Periscope. I would come on live just to talk about mental health and answer questions Monday through Friday. I used to come on 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, to talk about mental health. And then in 2018, I decided to create my own platform and started the podcast. In July, it's going to be 3 years, and I'm really excited about that. So the reason why I decided to start the podcast is because I think when I would talk about all these like healing mechanisms and different holistic ways of working on yourself, I think there was this assumption that, because I'm a therapist, it was easy. So I thank you. I said, you know what? I'm going to bring some more people on here that's going to tell y'all that it's not because I'm a therapist. It's everybody can obtain a life where you're living and not just surviving. And I have the perfect guest. That's a segue into my perfect guest who can attest to that. She is truly amazing. I don't know how long I've been watching her. I've been watching her for a while. She's extremely inspiring, and I really love watching her growth. So I'm going to add her to the stream and have her introduce herself to you all.
Oh, what a great introduction. I feel so special. Hi, everyone. My name is Nieisha Deed, and I am the founder of an organization called Pure Spark. Thanks so much, Celeste, for having me.
Thank you for being here. Yes, and she was on, I should have looked it up, but for people listening to this on the audio, you'll have a link to her story. She was on last year around the time when the pandemic was popping off.
You muted your mic.
She was on, Nieisha was on during the beginning stages of the pandemic to share her story. And we went into a lot of detail, but I do, when people come on, I kind of want people to know a little bit of a backstory on people, because I really think that unfortunately, like, people look at social media or look at where you are now and may not understand that there's a history behind you. So I kind of want to start off with telling everybody what you originally were doing for work, because what you're doing now is completely different from what you did from work before. So talk to people a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, my job a couple of years ago was something totally different. I actually was a corporate accountant. That's where I started my career off at, and that's what I did for about 15 years. And I always say that I never liked corporate accounting. I only did it because I needed a job and a profession that would help me survive. And many would probably ask, well, dang, you did it for 15 years, sis? Really? Like, you did a job you didn't like for 15 years? And I say yes, because it was so lucrative. I think we're all ingrained with the idea of, money equals happiness. And the more you have, the more happy you will be. But that was not the case for me.
Yeah, and money equals happiness, and we all know we need money to survive, right? And so we don't want to gloss over that part, because I always try to be transparent with the people who may struggle with hearing certain things, who may be struggling. But I think, growing up in America, there's this idea of what success is. And a lot of us, like you said, 15 years, you were struggling. When did you think you started struggling, when you look back?
In college, I was
Oh,
struggling. Yes, I was struggling in class. I did not. The concepts were so difficult, but it was kind of ingrained that like this is a profession that is going. You will be successful in this profession, right? So I graduated it back in the day. It was 2005. Okay, I'm putting my information out there so people can calculate my age and all that stuff, but that's fine. It was 2005, and in 2005. If people know anything about finance and business, that was the time that Arthur Andersen and the Enron scandal happened. And so the accounting profession was a profession that needed a lot of people because Sarbanes-Oxley came out. And that meant that there was a lot more work to be done as it related to internal controls and testing. All this probably sounds very foreign to people that aren't in business, but that meant that they needed people. So anyway, it was really something that was semi pushed on me a little bit in business school. But obviously I could have always changed it. But that's kind of how I got into it and stayed in it.
yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of us kind of don't really think about our wellness, especially I think people in the Black community. I don't feel like wellness was something that was talked about. A lot of times we were just trying to just work on surviving. So a lot, and our defense, our people's defense, we really didn't have the means, we didn't have the education, the knowledge behind how much wellness can add to our sustainability, to our peace, to our real happiness, So at some point you had a break and you just and you literally couldn't do it anymore. Can you tell people a little bit about that time?
Yeah, so it was 2017, and I kind of saw the foreshadowing kind of happening, right? Like I saw myself having to like push a lot more than I normally would to get through a work day. And there was some events that happened in my environment with work that added to my stress, which then exacerbated my symptoms. So I do have a diagnosis. I have a diagnosis with bipolar disorder. So when things are extremely stressful, and that could be perceived, kind of how you manage that stress is really what it all boils down to. But, not having that information and not really knowing what to do and how to do it, my symptoms were exacerbated. So what that meant was I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't eating well. I was talking to myself very negatively, which entered me into depression, which entered me into anxiety, and it deemed me disabled. Before being deemed disabled, I just felt, I felt like I was worthless, right? And so I became suicidal and just wanted to end my life. But thankful for family and friends who love me and was like, not on my watch. I'm still here today. But yeah, it definitely was something that gradually happened. And then it just got intensely worse. And it took me a while to recover.
And for people that are listening, hearing her talk about the stress and the bipolar disorder diagnoses, even if you don't have a diagnosis, stress can cause our systems to be affected by many different ways, right? Some people will feel it in their bodies. Some people, it can throw their whole rhythm off. And, you may need medical intervention. And then when it comes to like a diagnosis, so whether you need medical intervention or mental health intervention, a lot of ways to alleviate it or to help manage it is to deal with your stress. And so like, if she knew about that before, it wouldn't have been as extreme as it turned out to be. And I'm going to let her answer this part, or speak to this part. Our body gives us signs when we are not well. I think that we're self-healers. That's the reason why I really wanted to start this podcast. I think America profits off of our pain. And they just manage our symptoms. They don't want to tell us how we can work on ourselves. And so instead of Nieisha listening to her body because she didn't know how to do that, she just kept going. And it's only so much that we can take. But do you remember looking back the signs that your system gave you that it was not doing well?
Yeah, absolutely. The first being like confusion, right? So typically I would be able to go to work and I'd be able to concentrate and do things without a problem. But I got to, the sign or the warning sign was when I wasn't able to concentrate. I had confusion. And at one point it got so bad. This was after I left work. I was still struggling because I no longer had a job. So that added to the stress, feeling useless. I would literally walk from one room to another room and I forgot how I got there. So my memory was like so bad. And this is the second time that I had this kind of break. And I remember the first time that I had it back in 2008, I went to the hospital and I'm like, you guys, I have dementia or amnesia. That was like the first thing that I said, because I was like, I don't know what this is. I just can't remember anything. Like, I can't remember crap. Like, I must be mentally like something's going on. Like I'm losing my capabilities. But I never wanted to connect it to a mental health issue. I wanted to connect it to like a physical brain dysfunction of, I must be having an aneurysm, or you know what I mean? And I was like, can you do a CAT scan on my brain? Because, something is happening in my brain. I don't know what it is, but.
Well, I tell this story a lot to people because, that kind of thing of wanting it to be something medical. My oxygen level dropped out. I was so overwhelmed. I was so stressed. And I had to stay in the hospital overnight. And they took all these tests just to find out that nothing medically was wrong with me. They asked me to see a social worker. And I was like, they think something's wrong with me. They think I'm crazy. And I walked out of the hospital, and I tell that story a lot because I really want people to understand the magnitude on how much mental health can really destroy us if we allow it to, like if we're not caring for ourselves. And the process to start caring for yourself it can be challenging when you're not used to it. But it's definitely rewarding because then you start to feel like you have power over your life and it doesn't feel like life is just happening to you. And speaking of having control over your life, I want you to talk to people, and you can hear more details of her story in our previous episode where we kind of go in and we walk through all the steps. But as she ended up in the hospital, and she got out and she started to utilize different healing techniques. And I kind of want you to talk to people a little bit about that because I think that's truly an amazing story.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I have been an inpatient 3 times. So it was a struggle. The first time that I ever went into inpatient, it was like I wanted to get the heck up out of there and forget about the whole experience. But in 2017, when things happened again, I was like, I need to learn from this. And I need to change my lifestyle because there's something I'm not doing right. Definitely something I'm not doing right. So at first it was like, okay, stabilize me, right? And then it was like, what coping mechanisms can I learn or can be taught so that I don't have to end up in this situation again? Because when we think about mental illness, society says it's a weakness, right? Or it's, this person's stupid because they're depressed or they're lazy or whatever. And it's
or the black church as well. I think the black church, I think they're doing better, but a lot of people who grew up in the church, they think you have some demon or you're possessed or, so like a lot of that stuff. And a lot of Black people, we grew up in church. And mental health is not talked about. You may think you're not praying hard enough. So I just kind of wanted to add that part as well.
Absolutely. The stigma is real. And there's things that block us from getting the help that we so desperately need. And thankfully, I got the help both times. But I was a little hard-headed the first time. This time I wasn't as hard-headed. So this time around, I eventually got to the point where I was seeing a therapist, and this one therapist, it was actually at Whittier Street Medical Center. And, we was going through all these different things and talking about what is it called? CBT and, you know, all these different things that therapists talk about. And, you know, I'm taking all the homework and I'm doing all the assignments. And one of the things that she mentioned, my therapist mentioned, was, why don't you try yoga? There's this great yoga studio in your neighborhood. I live in Roxbury/JP. And she's like, you know, you could go there and check it out and do some yoga. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I've done yoga before, but I was like, all right, maybe I should.
Were you like, what does this have to do with mental health?
Yeah, kind of. I was just like, I guess. I was like, okay, I'll try. Listen, at this point, I just wanted to get better. So if she would have told me to go and like hop on one foot outside, I was doing it. I was going to try anything because I was desperate. I wanted to be better. I wanted to feel better. And you do get to that point. You know, sometimes it's sad that we have to get to that point, but that's the point when people actually start listening. And you know what I mean? And so instead of doing preventative care, we're kind of trying to rectify something that's happened. But so I started to do yoga and things just started changing for me. Now, this is my own personal experience. And yoga has helped me. So that's why I share it. You know, I was going to yoga classes and I just felt that I was able to open up more emotionally, and things just started coming to me that like, I was like, whoa, okay, so this is why I had low self-esteem growing up. And this is why I had an issue with my father. And this is, I was like, whoa. And the funny thing is that, you know, you have to be ready for therapy, right? Like, I feel like you have to be primed for it. And yoga really helped me to receive the therapy a little bit better, to the point where I felt like I was doing therapy on myself. You know what I mean? And you probably know that when your clients become their own therapist and they start processing things and you're like, yes, sis. That was me. When I started to go to yoga, I started to process things on my own. Like it was like another mind opened up or something, another level of consciousness, I should say, opened up. And I became woke. I mean, it you know, I felt like Buddha, the enlightenment, you know. So that's when I realized that, okay, therapy is a tool, and it's an awesome tool. It's a great tool. But when used in conjunction with other things, it could be so much more effective. And I wanted to start sharing that with people.
I love that. And like I'm a therapist, right? So I know, like, I clearly believe in therapy, but all my clients know, like, we're not just going to sit there and talk. It's a lot of action. Every time you leave my session, there's some action, whether it's a class or a session, we're doing action, because I think that's where we missed the mark. We can be enlightened, we could be self-aware, but some people don't do the action piece and they find themselves in this cycle. So yoga was one of the things that you found. And what about dance, and meditation? Like, what about the other things that you found to be beneficial for you?
Yeah, so I was a part of a challenge. Gosh, I don't even remember when I posted it. And it was like, do these 7 things and watch how you change, or something like that. And it was like reading a book every day, going outside and getting in the sun, you know, meditating for 5 minutes, and all these different things. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I like challenges. And I started to do it, and I didn't necessarily do everything, because it was like a lot of stuff on the list. I just like did what I could, and I kind of leaned on things that I liked. And meditation, man, when you just sit down to like quiet your brain, especially for me, I have you know, highs and lows, and sometimes I get irritable, and I'll have like really strong emotions. And you know, meditation has helped with that, because it allows me to just quiet my mind, right? Get into the present moment, and just take a pause, you know? And even if it's 5 minutes, it makes such a huge difference. So I am a huge fan of meditation. You know, I guess a part of meditation is included in yoga, to be honest with you. But, meditating outside in the sun, I go to Franklin Park. Franklin Park's not too far from me, and I'll go with my sister. We'll get on a blanket and we'll just sit there, be in the sun. And she's like, "Oh, this feels like we're out, we're traveling, we're on vacation somewhere." And that's because vacation is like a state of mind, right? So you can put yourself in certain positions. You can even, mindfulness people will say, our mindfulness guides, our practitioners will even talk about imagining yourself in certain places. Therapists too, right? You guys practice and teach mindfulness, right? So imagine yourself in a safe place. What does that safe place look like? What does it smell like? And you get that imagery, and then you start to calm down. You start to ground yourself. And there's so much peace in grounding.
Yeah, I love that. And, Nieisha just shared quite a few different things. And I love the fact that she says, this is what worked for me. Because as my podcast is not to tell you what to do or how to do it. It's just to kind of talk and share the different options and the different ways people have been able to find their healing. And she's found it in different ways. And then I just want to touch on the piece about mindfulness. When you make space to just pause, and be still, you can actually understand what's happening internally. I always tell people your thoughts are going to continue to go on with or without your permission. So if Nieisha just cuts me out, if something just happened with my kids and all this stuff is going on and I'm not processing it, my mind is telling me look, you're no good, you're this, you're that. And I'm not even paying attention to how it's operating. I'm not challenging those thoughts. And what will end up happening is that my behavior, my actions are going to be manifested through me not doing what I need to do with paying attention to my thoughts. Because now I'm listening to those thoughts. I'm operating off of fear. And so if you find yourself feeling stagnant or feeling stuck, I promise you got to just stop and pause and pay attention to that internal dialogue that's happening. Because believe it or not, you're listening. You're listening. Your behavior shows that you're listening. Does that make sense, Nieisha?
Absolutely. And one of my other therapist friends, had a great analogy to that. And she was talking about how she was in some training, right? And they had a projector up, and on the projector, it was what was it? Like a snake that came out on the projector and surprised everyone, right? So your instant reaction is oh my God, shock, right? But then you breathe and you realize, oh, it's not real, right? You take time to reflect. Oh, wait, hold on, wait. So sometimes we have these reactions to things that happen in our lives, right? Someone might have said something, but when you take time, like you said, to process it and then react, you might be able to react in a healthier way, right? So I agree. Pauses are great.
That analogy is dope. I might have to tell your therapist friend, I might have to use that one so I can let that was dope. That's actually so perfect on how that snake is actually not real, right? Those things people say to you don't matter. When you're grounded in who you are, you're not going to pay attention to it. What happened to you, you're not going to allow that to be the narrative of your lens or your story. But how are you going to do that if you ain't making space to stop and breathe? That analogy was on point. I got chills thinking about that. Tell her I'm going to be using it. Tell her to DM me so I could quote her.
I think you guys would actually really like each other. So I will definitely, too.
So because of all of Nieisha's work on herself, she started to look for some kind of wellness place in Boston, in the Black community. And what happened when you started to try to figure this out?
Yeah, so I realized pretty quickly that I couldn't go back to accounting. I couldn't go back to corporate America because it just wasn't healthy for me. The long work hours, right? I was working 12, 14-hour days, and that was normal for people to do. It was so bad that, in the beginning of my career, people were sleeping at work. It was just really bad. But because it was the culture, no one questioned it, right? No one batted an eye. Everyone wanted to be the workhorse. So I realized I had to get out of that place because It was not good for me. It was not good for my mental health. It was not good for my wellness. And I didn't even like the profession. I didn't feel like I was able to help people. So I knew when I made that call in December that I probably wasn't going to go back. And after a year, I realized, hey guys, I'm not coming back. This is just not for me. But what the heck am I going to do? Right? Like, okay, I now have this information that I've gained over a year of, my own story, my own data, my own things that I learned. How can I use what happened to me to help someone? Right? So I started thinking, okay, well, maybe I can work for a mental wellness organization in Boston. And I Googled some places, and I was trying to find Black mental health organizations in Boston. I couldn't find any. I saw NAMI, saw the Department of Mental Health, and but there was no organizations that was focused on us. And so I decided, well, I guess I got to create something. And that was the genesis of PureSpark.
Wow. And then so because of that, not being able to find something that felt like it was for you, you said, I'm gonna create my own. That journey of creating your own, what does it feel like for somebody that's listening as an entrepreneur? Because I think that I meet some amazing people with amazing ideas, but there's so much fear around creating your own, right? So tell people a little bit about what that feels like to create your own.
Well, first of all, I think that I'm in a unique position, right? And I'm not going to gloss over the privileges and the things that I have, right? Working for the company that I work for and doing the things that I did and having the support and the family that I have, there's a lot of things I don't have to worry about. So I'm going to put that first and foremost. So having that said, having to not worry about a lot of needs, like where am I going to live? What am I going to eat? How am I going to pay for things? Really left me in a position to have the opportunity and the privilege to create something. However, still, entrepreneurship is tough, right? It's very, very hard. You're creating something from scratch, and really the work that we're trying to do with PureSpark and the directory that we eventually created this month was something that really you don't see, right? So it's very innovative. You're trying to educate people and say guys, this is really important that we do this, and important that you buy into this so that we can help people. But yeah, I think that being an entrepreneur, you have to be relentless. You have to be resilient. Your mental health got to be in check, or else if you're trying to start a business, get a therapist, do some yoga, come to Peer Support by PureSpark. Get your mental health in check first, because it's a ride. It is a ride.
It's a ride, and it's not an overnight thing. I think, that's something I'm always transparent about. Even though there is some privilege in the way you started, you still had to do the work. And so PureSpark was created. Now with PureSpark, I just kind of want to share my screen really quick for people that are watching this on the video, because I think it's pretty cool that it's going to be something where people in Massachusetts can look for a wellness person of color. Can you explain why you created it like this, as far as not just because there's a ton of therapy sites, but this holistic type of wellness thing is different. Tell people a little bit about your mindset behind that.
Yeah, you're right. There are tons of directories, national directories. So if you think about it, the first one that probably comes to a lot of people's mind is Psychology Today, right? So you go on Psychology Today, and you have tons of therapists, right? And then you have therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men, and all these different ones. But a lot of them are just therapists, and they're national. So sometimes depending on what site you go to, and you drill down to Massachusetts, and you're like, y'all only got 5 therapists on here from Massachusetts and all of them booked up, that becomes very disheartening after a while, after going to a couple. So, really trying to work on building up a place for people in Massachusetts, people of color in Massachusetts, to just go to one place and kind of find their wellness team is the whole vision behind the directory. So like you said, we're including therapists, but we're not limited to therapists, right? So we're looking to have people who are yoga teachers, Reiki practitioners, right? Which is a Japanese tradition that works on your energy, acupuncturists, doulas, right? To help moms and expecting moms with the birth of their child, because we know that could be a very triggering and traumatic experience for moms. So anyone who really, life coaches, anyone who really sits under the wellness umbrella, we want this to be a one-stop shop so that people can kind of come here and fulfill their wellness needs. And we also know that not everyone's necessarily ready for therapy, right? So creating a place where people can go and find other alternatives that might help them along on their wellness journey, that's what we want to provide.
Yeah, I love that. And I read a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Was it in The Body Keeps the Score where, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not lying with the book, but they were talking about, yes, it was. He was talking about how, I forgot what type of therapy it was, but the therapist actually just kind of didn't even have to go into his past trauma, and he was able to work through some things, right? And I think that is so important for us to understand that even if we can't find a therapist or therapy doesn't work, that your journey does not end. I know there's such a shortage in looking for a therapist during this time, especially during this pandemic. And I think that our country does not do a good enough job at offering other options. You're paying all this money for insurance and you only can use it for therapy. Don't make no sense to me at all. So I think that, really be mindful and explore your options if you find yourself struggling. Again, I'm not deterring people from therapy, but I do know there's a huge shortage and it's really hard to find somebody during this time. Now, one thing that was birthed out of the pandemic was the Wednesdays groups birthed out of the pandemic. So she does, and I spoke at one. I've been to a couple. She has a group every single Wednesday. It's really cool. I love it so much. It's confidential. I'm gonna let her talk about it so that you guys can come. Now the directory is right now for Massachusetts. Maybe down the road it'll expand for my listeners in other states. But right now it's for Massachusetts providers only. So if you're listening to this, you're in the wellness field and you're a wellness provider, not just therapist, anything in the wellness field, go to PureSpark and complete the form so that you can be listed on a directory and start getting clients so people can know about you. But now this other thing that she does is for all of my listeners. Can you share with people what that is?
And it is free. So Peer Support by PureSpark was really something that I wanted to create in 2020, aside from the pandemic, right? It wasn't necessarily for the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, we had to do it virtually. So we started it in April. The pandemic happened in March, so it did kind of look like we did it just for the pandemic. But this was the plan all along, to create, a space for people to come and learn and get educated, because the 3 main things that I'm looking to do with PureSpark, first is end the stigma. How do we do that? By having these type of conversations. 2 is to connect resources with people, so the providers with potential clients. And 3 is to educate. So that's something that we try and do. We try to do all 3 of those things on Peer Support by PureSpark. Educate, end the stigma, and connect. And that's really kind of generally the high level of what we do. But for example, we'll bring on different practitioners like therapists and yoga instructors, and we try and give people a sample of, okay, what is something, like a little bit more insight into, what therapy might be about, or a little bit more insight into a certain specific coping mechanism, something that people can kind of take away, nibble on, use, then maybe check out whoever the speaker was and say, oh, well, I'm interested in learning more. That's really what peer support by PureSpark is about.
Yes, thank you for doing that. And it's webinar style. You don't have to have your cameras on, and you can still ask questions to Nieisha. You can ask the presenter questions in the chat. So it's very low key, especially, there's a lot of people that are struggling and really don't know like where to go or how do I ease my way into something. I think this is a perfect way. It's not group therapy. It's not therapy, but it's something that allows you to have an environment that can change that noise that's happening in your head. I mean, like, I know this stuff, but like listening to the presenter Wednesday, it's like, yes, that's good. I love that. Right. So it's like, I feel like I got my dose of medicine. Like I look at that as my medicine because I'm consistently every single day listening to somebody, mainly Les Brown. He's my motivational speaker guy that I listen to somebody every morning so that I can keep maintaining the spirit that I have, because I don't want to be conditioned by society. Right. And remember, the society is looking to sell us something. It's looking to make us feel less than so we can buy something. It's just looking to manage our symptoms, not work on allowing us to live. So like if you're looking at society to ordain your life, and you do that if you're waking up on social media, if you're waking up not being intentional, if you're looking for society to ordain your life, then you're going to always feel how you feel. But I promise if you like really start to be intentional about the direction that you go, literally day by, sometimes it's hour by hour when you're really struggling, or minute by minute. Right. So like, really, like, I'm going to make this hour better than the next hour, like, this day better than the next day. And I think that if you start to have that mentality, like life starts to look a little bit different. Would you agree, Nieisha? I see you over there waving and praising.
Yes. Yeah, last night we had a family member of mine, and it's funny, someone texted me and she's like, so many of your family members are in this field. And I'm like, I know, that's why I feel privileged and blessed, because I have a lot of this information on my hand. But yeah, she's amazing. We talked about leadership and purpose, which, is so important for our mental health, right? Feeling like you have a sense of purpose, that gives you a reason to kind of want to be here, right? Keeps you motivated. And so, yeah, last night was really good. And I think you're absolutely right. There's so much messaging, whether it be on TV, whether it be on social media, that will try to tell us what we should be thinking, right? Or how we should be thinking. But you have to be intentional and choosy about what you consume. And that's both what you eat and, what you're looking at, what you're reading. You got to be choosy about it. Yeah, because it impacts you. Whether you think it does or not, it does impact you.
It does. And I promise, like, I'm so in tune with my thoughts and stuff. I know this is a couple months ago. I'm in Walgreens. I see a guy with a Five Guys shirt on. He worked at Five Guys. The next few days, I wanted some Five Guys. And, I eventually got it. I succumbed to the pressure of the advertisement, right? But I knew when I was eating that burger, it was because I seen that man in the store with the Five Guys shirt on. And that's literally how it works with the messaging, right? That wasn't like, he didn't come in there because he was like, I want Celeste to spend money on Five Guys. Like, but there's a lot more intentional advertisement taking place that you're not even self-aware of. But I'm so self-aware. I understood what I was doing. I did it anyway, everything in balance. So definitely just kind of work on being mindful. This was good. Now, what I want you to do for people that are listening and they're inspired by your story, give them like a first step, like, what would you say to encourage them today?
Yeah. I think what you just said is very key, right? And that is awareness, right? Being aware about how you feel. Okay. So if you're in a relationship, if you're at a workplace or whatever, in a situation that doesn't make you feel good, right? Like, question it, like, is this someplace I should be? When I was working at that job, I ignored myself a lot. Right? Like, I ignored all the signs of this not being a healthy workplace for me. And I kept going, even though my inner voice was saying, this ain't it, sis. This ain't it. This ain't it. And I'd be like, shut up, but listen to your inner voice, that is the truth right there. That would be one, right? And once you get to the point where you actually kind of start listening to yourself, doing those actions, right? Practicing self-love, get to a point where you like yourself, and then get to a point where you could, kind of love on yourself, and you're going to see your life change. You're going to see, like, you're not going to be accepting certain things that you was accepting or allowing before. And it's kind of scary, because a lot of our culture and what we're taught, right? Be nice all the time to any, you know what I mean? Or all these different things that we get programmed into believing. Sometimes self-care and self-love and self-compassion goes against those things. And it could be kind of scary at first, because you're going against the culture. But continue to trust your inner voice. And, if you're feeling stuck, or if you're feeling like you need help, if you're feeling depressed, or if you're feeling like you're going to harm yourself, I think, Celeste, you offer a lot of resources. Reach out to your friends, reach out to your networks, reach out to people that you feel safe with, and don't be afraid to get the help that you need to get. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that you might not have the coping mechanisms, and those you can learn, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I love you start with emotions. You see, I got my emotion chart back here. That's like my biggest thing. I'm always like, so how are you feeling today? I'm always asking people about today, because I want them to, it forces you to be into the now and be like, dang, how am I doing today? Not how you doing, but how you doing today. And I think that's important to really understand your emotions, because our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior is all connected. It's all connected. So thank you for that. That was awesome. You are amazing. I really appreciate you making space to be here on this platform to share your story again and again. If you are inspired by her story and want to hear more, because there's a lot more details that we did not talk about today from her story. I really wanted to talk about Pure Spark and the holistic ways that, healing takes place with the pandemic happening. My goal is, and, the next wave of the pandemic is mental health, right? Some people have already been struggling. Some people have been in frozen mode or just trying to survive mode. And now the vaccine's out and people are breathing, but now the mental health stuff is settling in. And I think their resources are not going to be completely there. It's just not. And so I really want people to be educated about what they can do, what they can tune into, so that they can work on changing that thought process and that faulty thinking that happens to all. It happens to me. It happens to all of us. The difference now is that I'd be like, I meet the thought at the door. Before, it was just chilling in my space. It was like chilling rent free, which is why when Nieisha was like, it's scary when you're changing. It is scary when your system is used to a certain way of living, even if it's not healthy, and you're trying to introduce a healthy lifestyle to your life. It's going to be scary. That's why people stop the process, not because they don't want to be healed. It's because it really feels hard. It does feel hard. But I always tell people, we go to work when we don't feel like going to work. So we can push past that feeling if we really think about it. But, we survive at work, right? But to push past that feeling to allow a more healthier lifestyle, it feels hard, but it's definitely rewarding. I'm sure you would attest and agree to that.
Oh, yes, it is worth it. I never thought that I could be this at peace. I never thought that this was available to me. I thought that my life was always going to be kind of at a certain low level of misery, always kind of there. I didn't think that I could get to a place where I would wake up and be excited about the work that I do, or excited just about the day. didn't realize that I had so much control over, my feelings, my emotions, my behaviors, once I started getting the help that I need and learning how to cope and dealing with it. So it's just like you said, it's just getting over that hump and getting over that uncomfortable moment. And however long it lasts is very different for everybody. You know what I mean? It's up to the person. But once you get through it, I'm telling you, the other side is so peaceful. Like, it's just, and I want everybody to get there. Because once everybody gets there, gosh, can you imagine how we'd be living? Like, we would be living in it'd just be utopia. Like, it'd just be so different.
Yeah, it hit different. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for being here. I appreciate your spirit, your energy. I appreciate you kind of living out your purpose, because I think we all have a lane and all have a purpose, but unfortunately a lot of people aren't doing it because of fear, but you're doing it. So thank you. Thank you for
having me. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Have a good night. She's awesome. So if you enjoy the episode, make sure you share it with somebody that you love. If you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure you like this video. And this video will be on the audio podcast. So if you want to send it somebody that may be a podcaster, not a video person, you'll be able to send it to that person, because I think that the more that we share this information around wellness, I feel like the more, like she said, life starts to look a lot different. So thank you guys for listening. We'll be back Monday with a new episode, talking to somebody that's doing something to empower the lives of others. And I appreciate y'all for rocking out with me. And I will talk to you later.
Smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life goes